It is Saturday here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Chris Carter, Brian Batko of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette breaking things down for you in this preview of the Steelers' Week 3 matchup with the New England Patriots. As always, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder and Associates. They also help with workers' compensation. If you've been hurt on the job, you need to know who decides when you're better, who decides when your treatment's over, and who decides when your benefits are over. The answer might surprise you. It's the insurance company's doctors. They won't be on your side. Get someone on your side. That's Edgar Snyder Associates. Call them at 1-800-94-EDGAR because they'll fight for the workers' compensation rights that you deserve. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. The show is also presented by FanDuel. We'll get to some odds on this Steelers-Patriots game in a bit. But, Brian, it is rare that I ask a question when a coach is at the podium and they start pitching a few cuss words my way because they're pretty upset about something. But I pointed out there's 2 touchdowns, one from week 1, one from week 2, that are identical in the plays and almost identical in the mistakes, just basically the same mistake in the opposite direction. And talking about those deep crossing touchdowns, the Jets threw one to Garrett Wilson, the Seahawks threw one to Torrey Horton, and basically, I said, like, what do you have to do differently? And Terrell Austin's like, not that. And we worked on this during the week. And, he kind of didn't necessarily point the finger, but acknowledged that, like, there were preparations put in to handle that. And, we talked about other things like, when to establish inside leverage and things like that. But, Brian, it seems to me that there is an acknowledgement that there's some growing pains with the veterans trying to figure out how to still play together, which I think was part of our concerns when we were asking guys, okay, there's only one drive in the preseason and where this unit plays together, does this group need more time to play together?
Yeah, and I remember seeing in the joint practice that it seemed like there were some, issues that they were going to have to smooth out on the back end. And, I think Mike Tomlin made the right call by giving them some work in the preseason. Was it enough? I guess we'll never know. And who knows, Chris, maybe they wouldn't have even seen that kind of look had they played more series together or, more drives together in August, because this is the kind of game planning and scheming that offensive coordinators, really hit in earnest once the games start to count and matter for something. So I look at it more as, I think no matter how you slice it, it's concerning that veterans who were brought in for their football IQ, for their ability to kind of, having been there, done that, they've seen it all, Super Bowl champions, all 3 of the players involved in that, really. Darius Slay, Juan Thornhill, Jalen Ramsey, they've all been to the mountaintop and have conquered it on really good teams. And you would think that they'd be able to hit the ground running pretty much no matter what. And if you make a correction midweek, you're going to carry that out and execute it on the field on game day. It's almost ironic that it was a rookie wide receiver for the Seahawks who made them pay there. So on one hand, I think, and Terrell Austin mentioned this too. He's like, look, it's, it pisses you off. I think we have the right guys in the room to fix it. If we don't, we'll have to figure out who are the right guys, but that's nothing that you should be saying about players of this caliber. And it takes me back to last year where every week we were having conversations at the end about who is the one person not doing their job, who is most at fault for these communication issues. You subtracted multiple players from the equation, several players from the equation by the end. Minkah Fitzpatrick, Dante Jackson, Cam Sutton, Beanie Bishop, almost a complete overhaul, and it still keeps happening. At what point is the common denominator the coaching staff and either the way they are trying to impart these messages or the actual schemes and answers that they have for opposing offenses?
And that's the question. I think that's a question at this point. And granted, you could also say that, on the flip side of why didn't they practice more is like, you look at the injury list and he's like, maybe they're a little worried that they'd be missing even more players right now if they had played more guys in the preseason. But when you have these mistakes happening at this stage, Terrell Austin said, when you put mistakes like that on tape, teams take notice of that. And I guarantee you the Seahawks saw that play on tape in week 1 and they said, let's try this and see if they fix it. And they didn't. And I do think that's where the thing where we can't see unless, we don't get to see all the things in practice, like in the meeting rooms, what they're saying behind the scenes, as far as like, hey, this is what we got to do. So it's tough to say what's actually happening there. But I mean, I've also seen plenty of defenses under the Steelers, whether it's Mike Tomlin, Terrell Austin, Keith Butler, where they've properly passed off guys on deep crossers. I think that this is a situation where last year you had not good players doing these things. Cam Sutton wasn't the guy anymore. That was certainly a mistake, and he was kind of the guy that kept making a lot of the mistakes that was really sinking the secondary last year. This year, I think right now it's like, okay, people are figuring out the way they want to do. And I asked Terrell Austin this about Jalen Ramsey because I noticed, like, hey, he's playing a lot of like trail coverage where he's not establishing typical inside leverage that you would want on man coverage to kind of cut off routes so that the Torrey Horton touchdown doesn't happen. And in doing that, it's like, okay, you might feel that you're good when you do that, but you're leaving parts of our defenses kind of weak because of that. And I asked Terrell Austin about that, and he talked about like, hey, yeah, like he has the liberty to make that call sometimes, but he also understands there are certain things that we need him to do at certain times, and he gets that. It's about us putting that together. And so personally, I think that part of the thing here is that you have guys that have styles of play that have made their way in the NFL. Darius Slay and Jalen Ramsey, both former All-Pros. Guys, Deshaun Elliott, when he gets back, if he can, maybe he helps out here. But you look at Juan Thornhill, all these guys have specific play styles, and it's about bringing those play styles together. And sometimes the learning isn't necessarily learning what the concept is. It's remembering, hey, the thing that I've done my whole career, I can't do right now. I have to play exactly to what we're being coached to do, because if I don't, it's going to give up this open spot right here. And if the other team sees it, it's going to cost us. And I think it cost the Steelers quite a few times last week, especially in just key third down situations.
Yeah, and you mentioned too, I mean, the other part I guess we shouldn't ignore, in fairness to the Steelers, they don't have Deshaun Elliott right now. They don't have Joey Porter Jr. right now. And it's not that I don't think Chuck Clark or Brandon Eccles are capable of handling those duties well enough. They're NFL veterans too. It's not like they're breaking in rookies or anything, or
Right.
putting guys in roles they're unfamiliar with. But I think it's more about Jalen Ramsey, because we heard from both Thornhill and Slay this week that they're asking him to do a lot of different things. He's wearing a lot of hats. He needs to know safety. He needs to know outside corner. He needs to know slot corner. And, while I can understand that is, even for a future Hall of Famer, probably, that's a lot to digest, and you've got to be on your P's and Q's everywhere. Well, that's also just what the Steelers brought him in to do. And if it's too early in the season, maybe for him to handle all of that, then you need to simplify things for arguably your best defensive back. So again, to me, it comes back to coaching and coordinating the defense. So, I mean, only they know if they feel more comfortable in Ramsey, being that jack of all trades again this week, or if they'll try to settle him down and give him a more specific role this week. But I think the injuries play a part in that too, because from everything we saw in training camp and preseason, when it's all hands on deck, you've got Porter Jr. and Slay as your outside corners. Jalen Ramsey can flex between the nickel corner and a safety spot, and then you're kind of golden, and you've got your role allocation. Right now, things are in flux because they just aren't healthy.
Last week, the Steelers gave up 278 passing yards. The week before that, 212. Seems like the line for Drake Maye right now, if you look on FanDuel.com, is around that 225, 250 range. So if you were to say the odds, you got odds of Drake Maye passing 225 at minus 106, Drake Maye getting over 250 yards at plus 178. Do you think that he gets over that hill there at 250, or do you think the Steelers are able to contain him a little bit better this week, even with the injuries in the secondary?
I can't see this defense getting gashed through the air like that again. I feel like they're going to come up with something. And, the other part of it too, that's not necessarily a positive for the Steelers, he might not have to rack up that many yards because they might be able to run the ball at the Steelers as well. So Ramondre Stevenson and TreVeyon Henderson and Drake Maye himself with his legs might be doing some damage. So I probably lean toward the under there. I think that, this receiver group from New England, it's probably closer to the Jets than it is the Seahawks. Really, all three of them, I think, are somewhat similar, but I don't think New England has a player as good as Garrett Wilson or Jackson Smith and Jigba, who the Steelers had to game plan for so much these first couple weeks. I think it's more so whether it's Stefon Diggs or Kayshon Boutte, who's their leading receiver so far. Those guys are somewhat similar, and there's not a clear go-to guy, number one target. Although Cooper Kupp had his day in the sun against the Steelers last week at Acrisure Stadium too, so maybe I shouldn't sell him short.
Yeah, maybe. Let's talk more about this matchup in our predictions next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko. Stick with us. We'll be right back. We're back here in the North Shore Drive podcast, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Chris Carter, Brian Batko. The Steelers play the Patriots 1 p.m. Sunday in Foxborough. The Steelers haven't won there since 2008 when they won a Super Bowl. It's been quite a while. Looking at the odds here, brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel has the Steelers currently as 1.5-point favorites on the road. The money line sits at -120 Steelers, +102 Patriots. The over-under set at 44.5 points. You brought up the Patriots run game in just a bit ago, Brian, and I agree that's going to be something to focus on. If I'm the Patriots, I'm trying to figure out where anyone not named Cam Heyward is lined up, and I'm running in their direction, because that's what a lot of teams have done early, and that's what seems to have worked. Their rushing offense, not particularly great at this point. They are 23rd in rushing yards, 22nd in yards per attempt. But if you're a team trying to pick at a weakness, sometimes you say, like, okay, let's take our run game, let's put it up against their run defense. Let's see if they fix some things. And I think that's the ultimate thing here is the Steelers have shown weaknesses on both phases of defense, stopping the run and containing the pass. And if I'm the Patriots, that gives me sort of a smorgasbord of ideas. This is what attacks. It's going to be up to the Steelers to bite back and say, hey, you can't do this thing over here. We are going to make you one-dimensional. So a big thing is going to be stuffing the run, like you mentioned.
And I'm waiting for the week when they start to give more to TreVeyon Henderson, because I thought he was a really good pick coming out of Ohio State. I mean, he's got game-breaking speed and ability. I know Stevenson's having a good season so far, even though a lot of Patriots fans were kind of ready to bury him on the bench behind the rookie. That's, I think, always the case anywhere you are. The exciting new thing. But I do think Henderson is someone who eventually here it's going to turn into his favor as being the Patriots' number one guy. But Stevenson's been good in the passing game too. And I mean, I think that's an area where, I look at Drake Maye being able to extend plays, break the pocket and either pick up a first down running, or if he keeps his eyes downfield and, you're asking the Steelers defensive backs to plaster their man for an extra 2, 3, 4 seconds, that's where things can get iffy. I think if the Steelers get pressure on him, keep him in the pocket, and he's sort of forced to throw quick and, find his hot read and maybe put one out there for somebody in a contested catch situation. I like the Steelers defensive backs in that matchup, even without Joey Porter Jr. But, if it becomes a scramble drill for May, that's where I feel like Stefon Diggs still has enough in the tank that, he can get open and he can hurt you downfield.
Certainly, I think that's the balance the Patriots want to strike Drake Maye. Certainly, the future that they're hoping for in New England. You brought up his ability to run as a threat. The Steelers have to be aware of that. The Justin Fields took advantage of that a few times in their opener. Sam Darnold, while he didn't kill them with running, he
uses mobility a little. Yeah,
that's where I was going. He didn't hurt you necessarily in the run game, but he bought time for his guys, and that's something the Steelers have to be much better at, is containing guys, being on your P's and Q's. That's where I think that there's going to be some challenges for this team defensively. Now, we've talked a lot about the Steelers defense. Let's quickly talk about the Steelers offense. This Patriots team has the third best rush defense right now. They have the most sacks in the NFL right now, but they're giving up the most passing yards in the NFL right now. And one aspect that I see as a weakness for them to target is their linebackers. Their top guy is Bobby Spillane, a guy we remember from his time in Pittsburgh. They have struggled to cover running backs. You look at the stats in their first 2 games, teams are able to get yards through the air by hitting their backs. We saw Jalen Warren do that well. We know Kenneth Gainwell. That's a strength that the Steelers want to lean on. Is that a big key for this game for you, Brian? Because I personally think even if Christian Gonzalez isn't back and DK Metcalf that's a matchup you want to take advantage of. But I personally think if you can get your running backs in space, you might be able to get some easy yards for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too, especially since I do think this is going to be another difficult week to try to quote unquote establish the run. And I think Arthur Smith was getting that a lot when we talked to him Thursday. He's basically like, look, you're every week as a game planner, you're trying to strike that balance between, okay, what do we think we can do well? What's our overall philosophy versus what makes sense against this team and this defense that we're facing. So I think the subtext there is, yeah, we want to run the ball with Jalen Warren. We want to take some pressure off of Aaron Rodgers in our passing game, but other teams know that. And, they have their own strengths too. And the Patriots are another team where their strength is in the front seven. And I think you saw against Seattle when they were able to shut down the run and make the Steelers one dimensional, that pass rush just absolutely got after them. And I think it's going to be a very similar recipe for New England. They're another team that, I don't know that they have a Max Crosby or Myles Garrett type, but they have good depth
Yeah.
across the line from the interior to the edge. Harold Landry looks like his old self again in New England. He was really good against the Dolphins. Milton Williams, there's a reason why they paid him huge money to come over from the Super Bowl champion Eagles. That's going to be a big challenge inside, whether it's Mason McCormick or Isaac Seumalo, seeing a lot of him. So this is another game where the Steelers' offensive line is going to have to protect. And if you can't, throw hot, get it to Jalen Warren in space, Kenny Gainwell in space, let them make guys miss. Robert Spillane was really shoddy tackling last week against the Dolphins. He could easily shore that up. He could make those corrections. But if he doesn't, take advantage, use the short passing game to replace your running game. And then when you've got opportunities on the outside against someone like Alex Austin, who's kind of a no-name corner filling in for Christian Gonzalez, try to go up top to DK Metcalf and exploit that down the field.
All right, there you have it. We now are going to get into our predictions here. Brian, give us your X factor of the game, the deciding factor that you think plays the biggest role, and your final score prediction and how this plays out.
I don't know if it'll play the biggest role, but it can sometimes in these close games, and I think this is going to be another close game. Chris Boswell might be the best kicker in the NFL. The Patriots have a rookie kicker in Andres Borregales from Miami. He missed an extra point, I believe, last week. And just special teams in general. It has swung the Steelers' first two games. The Patriots returned a kickoff for a touchdown in week 2 in their win against the Dolphins with Antonio Gibson, their number 3 running back. So the Steelers' kick coverage needs to be better than it has been too. I think that the Boswell Borregales matchup being so lopsided, if it comes down to a kick for one or the other, I feel much better about the Steelers guy putting it through the uprights than I do the Patriots guy putting it through the uprights, although he does have some range. I think he booted a long one last week. So I'm going to go Steelers 20, Patriots 19, and they get out of Foxborough with their first win since 08.
That would be pretty crazy. A 2019 win. I similarly think this is going to be lower scoring. I think that both teams are going to have their troubles moving the ball in the other. I think this comes down to can teams protect the ball? Will there be a key turnover avoided in the late moments? And I think that whenever you're in Foxborough, it is a challenge. The Steelers in general just have struggled with the Patriots historically, even when it's been Bailey Zappi coming to Acrisure Stadium. They've had problems. And I look at the things that they do. I think because the Steelers want to be able to run the ball, the Patriots are good at stuffing the run. I think a big part of this will hinge on, does Christian Gonzalez play and can he keep up with DK Metcalf? If he does, I think that makes it a harder day for the Steelers to just get everything going and get the balance they're truly looking for. And because of that, I'm actually going to pick the Steelers to lose. I got the Patriots winning 23-19. I think it's close. I think it's down to the wire, but I think that just Foxborough, it's been a house of horrors for the Steelers for years. I still think that there's going to be some things that the Patriots do well. I like things that Drake Maye puts together to challenge things, and I think it's going to be he's going to do just enough while the Steelers offense is a little sluggish trying to figure its way against this tough defensive front while this young offensive line still figures things out.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much a coin flip game, and Drake Maye could be the decider in that. I think he looked really good last week. And, hey, as far as the Steelers and their struggles against the Patriots, a whole new regime really in New England. Obviously, Mike Vrabel played there, and he's very familiar with it. But he was in Tennessee for a long time. It's no longer the Bill Belichick and handing it off to Gerard Mayo, Patriots. It's a new day there, so not a ton of familiarity. And even going back to that 2019 season opener where the Steelers got housed, and in I think a Sunday night game, who's even left from that team? Cam Heyward, Chris Boswell, Mason Rudolph, who obviously didn't play. So as Mike Tomlin would say, these guys don't tote that baggage, and it shouldn't be the same, like you said, monkey on their back, House of Horrors type of thing. But I mean, I think it's just a tough place to play in general. They make it a hostile environment, and that's a fan base that should be re-energized by what they saw last week, especially with their promising second-year QB.
Mike Tomlin almost never wins in New England, but he also has never lost to Mike Vrabel. Unstoppable force, meet the immovable object.
Last time they faced Josh McDaniels when he was running the show for the Raiders a couple years ago, the Steelers won that one in Vegas. So, it was I think a lot more difficult to deal with Josh McDaniels' schemes when he had Tom Brady under center instead of anybody else.
Certainly, we'll keep you covered all weekend long as you get closer to game time. Our guys, Brian, Jerry, and Ray, will be there on hand for the big game Sunday, 1 p.m. Get all our post-game coverage here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Thanks again for tuning into the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We got more content coming your way, so keep it here with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and the North Shore Drive podcast. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.